the Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
I want a hug. I want a Jurgen Klopp hug. Hello, I'm Richard Parr and welcome to the Best in the World. I'm of course talking about the Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp. Now you may have noticed before a game, after a game, when a player's coming on as a substitute, Jurgen Klopp is just hugging his players. It was interesting, I was watching the Liverpool-Manchester City game just over a week ago, and I noticed that when Jordan Ibe was coming on as substitute, the Liverpool midfielder, Jurgen Klopp came from behind him and gave him a big hug. And when Ibe ran onto the pitch, you could see it in his eyes that he was going to try even harder to keep his manager happy. It was almost that father figure role of, I'm not going to let you down, Dad. And I think it's a really infectious way of coaching. It's something I've never really seen publicly. Obviously, coaches might be doing that on the training ground. And I really think that what he said before, Jurgen Klopp, is that he is a player's friend, but not their best friend. And I think that's a really nice way to work with the players. And it'd be really interesting to see how other players would react to this type of coaching. Obviously, there's huge problems at Chelsea right now with Jose Mourinho and Diego Costa. Mourinho was, of course, very famous for keeping his house in order and not really letting the press get near, but I think he's now a little bit too much of that old school teacher, taskmaster. So we'll have to see if they improve. But just want to stay with Jurgen Klopp a moment. I don't know if any of you have seen it, the Liverpool TV interview with Klopp with a 9-year-old Scouser, where the kids teaches Jurgen Klopp some Scouse words. And again, Jurgen Klopp comes across as such a nice guy. He's so encouraging to the kids, saying, I want to see you in 6 years to sign a contract with Liverpool, work hard, focus, continue on your studies. And it's really inspiring for both people young and old. I'm 32, nearly 33, and I'm still inspired by this guy. And I'm sure there are many Liverpool fans and football fans around the world who have a similar feeling towards Jurgen Klopp. Now, speaking of influential Germans, that's exactly who we have on the show today. A 1990 World Cup winning goalkeeper. We've got Bodo Illgner. He's currently a pundit with the TV channel Bein Sports in the United States, and we have a fantastic conversation. I do ask him about Jurgen Klopp and his coaching methods, but beyond that, Bodo talks about his time with Real Madrid, winning the Champions League in 1998 with them, winning the World Cup in 1990 with Germany. And there's a few different things that we cover. In particular, he talks about the importance of teamwork and camaraderie, and that the difference between 1990, where they won it, in 1994, where they didn't have a very good tournament, was the camaraderie and the friendliness amongst the team and the players. One of my favourite phrases is, teamwork makes the dream work, and Bodo really proves that that's the case in this instant. He also talks about some of his favourite coaches, some of his favourite players. He's played alongside some of the greatest players in the history of football and in the history of Real Madrid. We're talking people like Raúl, Fernando Hierro, Clarence Seedorf, Roberto Carlos, Iker Casillas. These are top names, and certainly things we can learn from here on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. Now, if you want to learn even more, I'm giving you a chance to do it for free with my latest sponsor, that is Audible. And today's podcast is brought to you by audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/best. That's www.audibletrial.com/best. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. And they have got quite a lot of sports biographies. Of course, we're talking about the 1990 World Cup with Bodo Illgner. Paul Gascoigne played a massive part in that. And you can download his audiobook, for example, Gaza, My Story. That's on Audible. You can download that there. Then there's lots of other sports books you can download to listen to. Harry Redknapp always managing, his autobiography. Maybe you like the Spanish side of Bodo Illgner, his time in Real Madrid, but you're a Barcelona fan. So how about listening to Luis Suarez crossing the line? My story from him. And if you're really a combative person, how about something from Roy Keane? The Second Half, that's written by Roddy Doyle. You can listen to that. It's all on audible.com. All you have to do, www.audibletrial.com/best. Bodo Illgner, World Cup winning goalkeeper, Champions League winning goalkeeper. He's next on the Best in the World.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello, Bodo. Welcome to the Best in the World with Richard Parr. As a player who's played for Real Madrid before, I just wanted to ask you what kind of pressure the manager Rafael Benitez must feel like he's under right now.
Every coach with Real Madrid is under a lot of pressure. Obviously, it's one of the biggest clubs in the world, and only results count in the end of the day. So the pressure after the big loss against Barcelona, of course, is tremendous.
At Liverpool now, there's a German manager. It's Jurgen Klopp, one of your countrymen. One of the things I notice about him is he hugs his players a lot, almost like a father figure. Does that make the players want to work harder for him?
I think so. Yes, there's different coaching styles, and he's the one who applies the one like a father figure, maybe a good friend, an older brother, something like that. Very familiar, and a very familiar atmosphere he tries to create in the club. And I think he has chosen the club very well for that. He did that so in Germany when he has chosen Borussia Dortmund, but now I think Liverpool is a similar style of club, very grounded, very close to earth, and very working atmosphere there. So I think it's a perfect fit there. And yes, indeed, your observation were completely right. He loves to be in contact with his players and demand therefore a lot of them.
Were you ever hugged by any of your previous coaches or managers?
Yes, I was. Yes, we had a very close relationship to my first coach in Cologne, Christoph Daum, who was my youth coach in General et al. And he had a similar style of coaching.
And if you weren't a goalkeeper, what would you have been then?
This question was never asked to me because it was obviously clear by the age of 14, 15. The dream was created earlier by the age of 6, 7 maybe, but it became more clear now when I got to the age of 14, 15, I would say.
And why the goalkeeping position? Why not a striker? Why not a defender? What was it that drew you to playing in goal?
Yeah, to be honest, I think I was a little bit. I did not want to run too much when I was younger, so I started as a player in the field, but not with very much success. My very first season at the age of 6, I was the only one with a very white shirt coming off the pitch, and not running too much, and so I turned into the goalkeeper position pretty early when my father coached my first team. And there I stayed.
And you mentioned Christoph Daum there. You mentioned your father. Who had the greatest impact on you as a young player?
Of course, my father first, because he organized a father who was a former goalkeeper, to train with me. Specifically at the age of 7, 8 already. So by this time, I don't think that there were too many goalkeeper coaches around there, but my father already was searching for this father who wanted to do that. His son played within my team, and he was a former goalkeeper, so he was able to pass on to me the basics for the goalkeeping. After that, my father tried to find a lot of literature about goalkeeping, about coaching, about training as a goalkeeper, and so he created the very first interest in me. After that, of course, Christoph Daum as my youth coach, but also Bertie Vogts as a youth international coach who has chosen me for the under-16 team later on and promoted me quite a lot until I made it to the first team. These were the first coaches who had the biggest impact on me.
Were you always competitive as a kid?
I was. I did not like to lose at all in any game, even if in a board game. I got very bad mood, and I remember once training with my father at the beach in the summertime. I was so angry because he scored too much against me, so I was throwing sand at him. We are still laughing about these stories these days.
What was your favorite board game?
Football. There was always a board game or ball game.
Board game.
A board game, I think you call it parches in English. So where you have to dice your dice and run around your figures, 4 figures, and to bring them home. And sometimes you get kicked out. I got so angry about that.
Did your schoolwork ever deteriorate because of your focus on goalkeeping?
I tried not to, but it's funny that you ask now, because a couple of days ago I put out my last grades, and in my memories they were very good, and overall the end result of my high school diploma was good, but the exams by themselves were not really outstanding. So I would say, unfortunately, yes, in the end, because I got the contract as a professional goalkeeper when I still had a year left of school. So the last year I had training with the professionals, I was traveling with the professionals, I was traveling with the youth international team, and I had to do my exams. And unfortunately, they were not as good as I wished to. But luckily, the overall result was still good because I was working hard and good the years before in school.
Realistically, do you think you can make it as a top athlete, sports star, and also concentrate and work really hard on your studies? Or do you realistically have to give one up a little?
No, I think you can do. I think you can do, because you're traveling a lot, and if you're ambitious in both things, you can manage that. Definitely, there's a good chance. You might be better if you just concentrate on one thing, but you can manage and being still very, very good in both. And it's only a short period of time. For example, this was the last year or 2 years when I had really to concentrate. But if you concentrate on school while you're in school, you're doing your homework, when you're doing your stuff right away, and being attentive right in the middle of the class, and then go to practice and be 100% concentrated in your practice, I think there's a very good chance that you can make it both.
So what was your normal pre-match ritual before you go to a match? When you talk about practice, you talk about getting ready. How would you get ready for a match? And did it change in your career at all?
It might have changed slightly, but I think the overall concentration or the overall preparation was pretty much similar at some point. The first of all, the week ahead of a game is crucial. You can't just let the week go by and then imagine or expect to be on top on the match day. That's impossible. So the work throughout the week is essential to being up top level. And then on the match day itself, obviously not when I was 14 or 15, but when I was a professional, I got up early, much earlier than a lot of other players, around 8, 9, had my little breakfast. And after that, sometimes we had a whole walk with the whole team around the buildings or somewhere in the woods to relax and to shake off a little bit the pressure. Lunchtime. And usually before we're heading out to the match, I had a little massage on my back, on my neck, to release some tension I got there from the week or from the match day. And then on the way in the bus already to the game, I had my concentration. I closed my eyes and saw some situations that might occur during the match and lived them already through. Yeah, and then after that, being in the dressing room, already stretching myself before getting out. And then one to be the first one to head out on the pitch to get it warm with the ball, all these things and the normal ritual. But was more or less the ritual the whole career of mine.
You mentioned quite a few things there, from diet to the walks, to meditation, everything like that. Is taking an early morning walk with the team something very typical for many clubs to be doing?
I think yes, because you want to get out of your bed, you want to get out of the hotel room, right? Otherwise, if you don't do anything, if you don't have any activity at all, then you just hang in your room and sitting on the bed, because in a hotel room there's not too much space, so just watching television, playing games or whatsoever, but you're not being active. So I think it's a ritual that a lot of clubs do. Some even meet each other in one of the conference rooms. We did that with Fabio Capello, and did some stretching, some warm-up stretching in the morning when we had the game in the afternoon or at nighttime, just to interrupt the day.
And you mentioned you would kind of focus and practically meditate. Did anyone teach you about that? Did you learn that yourself? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it developed a little bit. I remember when I first got into a selection around the area I lived. So you go from the town selection to an area selection, then a West Germany selection, then finally to the German national team as a youth player. And one of my coaches in the area selection, he said, I see you from the outside. I see you very calm. But I can feel, or I can see in some actions you do, that you're still nervous during the game, or ahead of the game. So try to relax a little bit and be as calm as you seem. So that was the reflection point for me to think about it. And it was funny because this guy, we were driving together to a match, and he had some Barclay James Harvest music on, which relaxed me quite a lot. So then I started with that, listening to that music and having calm thoughts, and I started reading about it. No, that was the first thing, the only thing that I ever remember that someone was talking about meditation or something like that, and I got into it more and more. And I felt good with it, actually, when I had positive thoughts, when I've seen situations, for example, picking a cross out of the air, being faster than an attacker going towards the ball, or doing some kickoffs or something like that. So I've felt much more and more comfortable throughout time.
Were there any other songs or any other bands which came into your life after that, later in the career?
No, sooner or later I dropped the music. I don't know why, but I did not need music anymore to relax. I just closed my eyes in the bus, for example, and could disconnected there completely. So I did not even notice what was happening around me.
And is this meditation, this focus, is it something you still do now, post-football career?
I would do if I have some match coming up. So even if it's a veterans match, I would do so. But as it's so not too often, I would do that in these occasions, but not in others.
And you mentioned you'd start your day with a light breakfast. How important was nutrition and diet in the late 80s, early 90s?
When I started in '85 as a professional, it was not very important, although they were thinking about it. They were starting to think about it, but we still had our steak and French fries ahead of the game, 2 hours or 3 hours before the game, which was, from our point of view now, not the ideal food. Then we later on swapped that into pasta with tomato sauce, which was more carbohydrates. That's much, well, at least an advantage by then. We were starting to think, but it was beginning in the late '80s. Probably it got a little bit more serious, but there's no comparison to our days.
Mm-hmm. Was there anyone particularly, maybe at Real Madrid, who started making the changes during your career?
Oh no, it started earlier in Cologne. Actually, our physical prepper physical coach, he was there and was developing quite a lot and putting out there some ideas for us already.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
We're just going to pause the conversation with Bodo to remind you that for you, the listeners of The Best in the World with Richard Parr, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. They've got lots of books on Audible, and to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/best. Again, that's audibletrial.com/best for your free audiobook. I strongly recommend you do it. I've done it. I've listened to the Arnold Schwarzenegger autobiography, among others. It's very, very easy to do when I'm in the gym, when I'm in the car, when I'm on the train. I'm listening to an audiobook to get a little bit smarter. So once you've downloaded The Best in the World with Richard Parr, you've listened to that, then you can press play on to your latest audio book. And speaking of Richard Parr, just like to say, if you like this podcast, I'd love it if you'd go to podcastland.com and vote for my podcast as the best of the week. All you have to do is go to the Podcast Land page, that's podcastland.com, go to Best in the World with Richard Parr under the search box, and when you get there, just vote by putting in your email address, and that will give me a vote, and hopefully I can get high up in the sports rankings and in the overall podcast rankings. All of that really helps. And if you want to know about things which can really help you, well, continue to listen to Bodo Illgner. He's got some really interesting insight. If you want to be a professional goalkeeper, sportsman, or you just want help in your everyday life, well, let's continue to learn from the best. Here's more from Bodo.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
So you mentioned the process of getting to the national team through the youth teams and the state teams, and so were you really ready when you made your debut for Germany? Was everything in place?
Yes, I felt so. Actually, I really felt so because it was quite a hard selection. It was quite a hard and tough way to go. And it's not that you come out of your little team on a village and then just play for your national team. As I mentioned before, you have to make your way through all these selection teams, starting in your little town, going up to the state and to the western part of Germany. And you always find on that way quite hard rivalry. There were other good goalkeepers, tough goalkeepers, very well prepared. So you had to make your way. And once you reach up top there, you know that you have done it, that you have been the best of all those you have seen and all you've trained with. You have been the best. And that gave me, for example, the confidence to feel prepared to play for Germany.
What's going through your mind when you're standing listening to the national anthem in the stadium for the first time when you're playing for Germany?
It was fantastic. Standing out there and being in the spotlight, all spectators standing up, singing the national anthem, and by that time we were starting to sing along as well. It was not usual before that, but in that time, around '88, we started to sing along, and the people started to sing along, and then it felt great. It was goosebump feeling.
And you were obviously part of the 1990 World Cup squad, which went on to win it. How do players fill the time in between matches? Because obviously you're away from home, you're away from your family. What are the kind of things that you do as players to keep yourself occupied when you're away?
In 1990 was a perfect example how you can do it and how you can do it well. Because we were very concentrated when we were training, but we had our spare time. We were able to have our wives around and do some activities with them. So time flew by and we were prepared very well. We trained very hard, but we also had our spare time, and it was the right mixture at that time, and the result was obvious.
What would you do in your spare time?
I was driving around a lot with my wife. We going to the Lake of Como, had some ice cream there, and we're just hanging out there with Pierre Littbarski, for example, Paul Steiner by then, who was a teammate of mine in Cologne, and so we spent a lot of time together with our friends and our family.
And you were all harmonious? Were there ever any cliques between groups, or were you really all as one, as a team?
No, in 1919, I think you can only be a World Cup winner if everything works out fine, and this is on the field, but aside of from the field as well. And this worked really well out for us, and the group was very harmonized. And in 1994, for example, there was not as much harmony, and you could see it directly in the result as well.
And so, obviously, in 1990, you get to the final. You mentioned earlier that you had struggled a little bit with nerves, but then you had your kind of process to calm you down. Obviously, it's a World Cup final. Millions and billions of people around the world are watching it. Did you behave? Did you do anything differently that day?
No, I did not, because I learned throughout the young years already that every game is important. So even if you have a friendly game or whatsoever, if you want to perform well, you have to do exactly the same always, and not to prepare more intense for a World Cup final than you would do for a cup game against a second division team. And that was my biggest point, or my most important point in preparation. So treat every game the same, and then you don't get even more nervous on even a bigger game. So that was what my tactic.
So how did it feel when you were able to get your hands on that World Cup trophy?
Well, it was fantastic. It was just such a release as well, because the game was so close. The tournament was long. Even the whole preparation for this tournament, starting with qualification against teams like Wales, it was very tough. We could qualify for this World Cup only in the very last game, and pretty with a very last goal as well from Thomas Hassler by then. So it was a long way until this World Cup, until this title, and it was fantastic. And the 90 minutes against Argentina, they were so long as well. So it was a big relief and big fun.
And of course, you became the first goalkeeper ever to keep a clean sheet in a final, even though you were playing players like Diego Maradona. Could you quite believe that?
I never knew that, actually, until I moved to the United States, where statistics are so important, and I heard it for the very first time, and that was 5 years or 7 years ago. So by then I did not even have an idea. I didn't even care if I got a clean sheet or not. I just cared about the title itself, to be able to hold this cup in my hands.
And the victory in 1990 was a time when Germany was coming back together. How important was this victory for the future of Germany, a united Germany?
I think it was very important, because the Eastern Germans joining Western Germany, I think they could feel being united even more with this sport. Sports is very uniting, and especially football, as there's so many people loving this sport. So I think it was the first step into unification of Germany.
And you mentioned the youth teams and the process you went through. Since you, obviously being a great goalkeeper, winning in 1990, Germany have then had Oliver Kahn. They've now got Manuel Neuer. What is it about the German system that is making such great goalkeepers?
I think Germany started pretty early to have specialists in training their goalkeepers, and then I think it's a mentality thing as well. When you go through the mentalities or the countries, I would say the more south you go, the more risky the goalkeepers usually play, and the more north you go, the more or the less risky and the more responsible they try to act. So I think it's a mentality thing of Germans. It should be around England as well, the Dutch, all these countries. They bring out good goalkeepers, very interesting goalkeepers, and I think a lot of it is a mentality. A lot of it, of course, is a preparation. Although if you know now, even in Spain with Iker Casillas, such a great goalkeeper, the goalkeeping got more and more interesting for the young kids as well, and the preparation got much better now too. There's so many goalkeeper coaches out there with preparations, with titles, who got their preparation from the federation. So preparation gets better in all the spots, but I think it's about the mentality. And if you have a raw model to look up to, like we always had in Germany, Sepp Maier, Toni Schumacher, Oliver Kahn, now Manuel Neuer. There's always young people who want to be the same and want to be as good as them. And Spain, for example, had a good time with Iker Casillas. Now they bring along De Gea. I think there's a lot of people looking up for them too. So I think it's all this mixture of preparation, of having a role model, and of mentality.
You were obviously at Real Madrid when a young Iker Casillas was coming through. Could you always tell that he was going to be as good a player as he was? And what were the attributes he had specifically?
It's hard to tell when a 17-year-old goalkeeper comes along. It's hard to tell that he will be a European champion, Champions League winner, and a World Cup winner. But I could see that he would be able to play for Real Madrid. That talent was obvious. And then it always had to be the same as in my career, that he continues this development as you could see his talent. And that you never know either. If somebody gets crazy, likes to gamble, or has a lot of alcohol, or whatsoever his personal life, you never know what's going on with these guys. But on a normal development, you could see that he was very talented and that he would be able to play for Real Madrid and maybe for the national team.
How much would he turn to you for advice?
He would not ask for advice, but I would give it to him in the early beginning. I felt when I started, I was second goalkeeper behind Toni Schumacher, and I was just watching him training, watching him preparing for a match, and watching him, in his all as a goalkeeper. And I think Iker Casillas did the same. He was very observant. He was very calm. He was not nervous at all. He was very open for anything you would tell him. So he was a good kid, and I felt remembered to my beginnings in Cologne with Toni Schumacher in front of me. So I wanted to give him the same experience I experienced.
I'm going to come back to Real Madrid in just a moment, but you mentioned 1994 World Cup. It didn't go quite as well as 1990. You then decided to retire from Germany, and obviously they went on to win Euro 96. Was it something you now regret that you decided to retire at such an early age?
I wouldn't say regret, because the situations around this World Cup was not nice. The whole atmosphere, it was not fun anymore to go to the national team. And I think the national team is something you go voluntarily. You are called in, of course. You have to be called in to go there. But if you don't want anymore and you don't feel comfortable there, you're free to not go. And I had this feeling that it's not fun anymore. I didn't want to spend my spare time, my time in an atmosphere I did not enjoy anymore. Of course, everything turned out perfectly well 2 years later, but you never know if everything would have been the same. So on one side, I regret it. On the other side, I would say I would do it if I would do it again differently, not stepping back directly during the World Cup. But by that time, I just did not feel comfortable around this atmosphere.
And you next had a big life-changing moment to Real Madrid. How difficult or easy was it to adjust to a new country, a new language, new food, new customs in Madrid and in Spain?
I did not consider it difficult. I think it was much more difficult for my family to come with me, to be there in a completely different atmosphere, living 2 months at least in a hotel, with me traveling around because I was barely at home in the first year. Fabio Capello, he took us to hotel from one hotel to the next hotel in preparation of the next game. So I did not spend too much time home, and that, of course, made it more easy for me to integrate, to learn the language, and to learn the habits in Spain. But I did not consider it very difficult. I had a great goalkeeping coach there. I was very lucky to find Miguel Angel, one of the former greats of Real Madrid goalkeepers. He was a great guy, a nice guy, and a very good goalkeeper coach. And I was lucky to have Fabio Capello's trust, because he was the one who was asking for me as a goalkeeper, and I felt this trust. Although there were two other great goalkeepers with me, with Santiago Canizares and Paco Bullo, two other greats of Real Madrid's goal.
And because I lived in Madrid for a while, and I found the eating times, which are very different to England and other parts of Europe, quite difficult and things like that. But as a player, how much pressure do you feel playing for Real Madrid?
I did not feel too much pressure itself, because the most pressure, or I demanded always the best of me. So I put the pressure on me all of my career. So I did not feel more pressure playing for Real Madrid than for the German national team or for Cologne. Honestly, not. I did not. But I have to agree that the eating times were a little bit difficult in the beginning, especially with young kids, when you are only able to have dinner at from 9 p.m. on, or lunch from 2 p.m. on. So that was a little bit difficult. Yes.
Yeah, all these little things. With Real Madrid, you got to the, I believe it was 1997 Champions League final against Juventus. You played in that final. What did you...
It was 98.
98, 97, 98 season, yes. Which you went on to win. What did any of the players turn to you about playing in a big final, because you obviously played in 1990, or were all of these players just so experienced anyway that they were able to focus themselves?
Well, there were a lot of players who were really interested in my career, or in my achievement of the World Cup, obviously, because Spain did not ever made it to the final by then, and they had never won the World Cup. So a lot of the young players, they were really looking up to me and saying, wow, that must be great, World Cup winner and stuff like that. So they were really excited about that. And I was teasing them sometimes, and so we were joking around about it. But other players, no, they of course, Raúl and Fernando Hierro, Manolo Sanchez, all these players, they have played a lot of big games, so they were not asking for advice or something like that. The only thing that was really important by then, I think, was Chendo, a long-time Real Madrid player, on the right back side. He had a little speech in whole of the team and said, I'm so long, I play now so long for Real Madrid. It's one of my last years now. We've never won this title in my time here. So be sure to win this one. This chance does not come too often, and so grab it. And I think that was very important to remind us that it's a real final, and you don't get too many chances to play one of these.
You mentioned that the camaraderie of the German team was so important when you won in 1990. How similar was that to the Real Madrid team in 98?
Connection was good between all the players. It was maybe not as intense, because there's so many players from all over the world around there. We had Clarence Seedorf as a Dutch, we had Roberto Carlos as a Brazilian player, we had some Spanish greats, of course. Then we had Davor Šuker and Mijatovic, Panucci as an Italian, me in goal as a German. So we were quite a mixed team. It was a team of common interest, I would say. Common interest to be successful, and there were all great professionals to hold on to that big aim.
You mentioned some fantastic players there. Individually, who do you think was the most talented player you played with?
It's so hard to tell. Every player I just mentioned had a great talent and slightly different. Yeah, if we talk about Roberto Carlos, look at his physical strength, his good shots he made, the technique he used when he has chosen his free kicks, for example, his willpower to run the line up and down. On the other side, the experience and the coldness of Manolo Sanchez, for example, then the good defensive work and the good passes from Fernando Hierro from the back. It is hard to tell who is the best. Raúl is one of the best, of course, as well as he has an instinct for the situations, and he had a talent to change his thoughts into real actions finally, right? If he saw, for example, a goalkeeper standing a little bit too wide in front of out of the goal, so he makes a scoop, and so he had the sight for it, but also the technique to make it. It was fantastical players I played with. I was really lucky.
And what about coaches? You mentioned Capello and other coaches. Who was the one which had the greatest impact on your career, and what in particular?
Oh, I would go back to one of the early coaches, to Christoph Daum, who impressed me pretty much with his training stuff. He was really prepared. Every game we played, even in the youth already, he prepared against the smaller teams. We did not know any player or any system of them. But he knew. He prepared us. He knew weaks and strengths. So I would say that he was very, very impressive in the beginning already.
And you now work as a TV analyst, watching lots of football. Is there anything you know now that you wish you'd known as a player?
Not that I know. I have a different view now, of course, of football. As a goalkeeper, you were pretty much, or I was pretty much defensive orientated. The biggest goal for me was not to receive a goal, and the second thing was to win the game by any means. So it would be, if I would have to put out there 5 or 6 defenders to win a game, I would have done that. As a TV analyst now, I love the offensive football. I like the high pressure. I like teams who take their chances in their hands and not just sitting back and parking the bus in front of the goal.
So it's also very important that a goalkeeper is very good with their feet these days. Would you say that's more important now than it was before?
Of course it is, yes. This rule changed throughout my career, so I had a slight disadvantage we had to change in our days. All the goalkeepers playing in my days we were not as talented, of course, because it was not necessary when we started our careers. And while we were playing, we had to adjust and to become better. The kids or the goalkeepers playing now, they grow up with this rule, and of course they have a lot of advantages over us in this sentence.
And where were you when Germany won the World Cup last year, and how did you feel? Did it bring back any memories for yourself?
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, not memories, I would say, but I enjoyed it a lot. I was in the States. I was working for Bein there. We had our night show after that, and it felt good to be the winner in this panel and to chat about a World Cup my country had won, and and to share some experiences, of course, of my World Cup as well.
And just finally, Bodo, tell us what you've been up to and how it feels. Well, firstly, how did it feel when you finally decided to retire, and what have you been up to since?
I was lucky and unlucky. I got some injuries at the end of my career. Was not playing regularly. Iker Casillas was coming up there, the young talented goalkeeper. So I was lucky in that way. I did not have to rush to recuperate, to be between the sticks as soon as possible, maybe slightly injured still. He was playing very well, and I was taking my time to recovery, and he developed better and better. So in the end, I ended up substituting him, holding his back on the bench, free, that he could develop as he could. And so the break from being a player to not play anymore was not too big. I think it would have been different if I would have stepped back as a playing goalkeeper. But sitting on the bench for the last couple of months throughout my career prepared me a little bit for the feeling not to play anymore. And after that, I was pretty much into football. I started as a TV analyst right away. I did some studies about sports directing. I took a course in the federation, in the Spanish Federation for goalkeeper training. I trained some youth goalkeepers, which was a lot of fun. And I'm happy to say that there's some kids out there who got the spark from me and still playing goalkeeper and developing very nicely. And and continued my work as a TV analyst. That's a lot of fun because you travel around, you can still see some of your old friends and teammates, and you're still close to football, but not involved it in the daily basis.
Well, that's great. Bodo, if people want to get in touch with you or see what you're up to around the world, do you have a Twitter or a Facebook page or a website people can contact you at or see what you're up to?
I have an old Facebook page. I'm not on that for years now. I was more active on Twitter recently, but I have to admit it's hard to put out your thoughts every day there. So I'm not continuously on Twitter either. But if you can find me, then it's on Twitter.
Okay, I'll put a link to it when I put this interview up. Bodo, I really appreciate your time. It's been a thoroughly interesting conversation. I could talk football all day if you find it really intriguing. But Bodo, thank you for being the best in the world.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome and thank you for contacting me.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
There we have it. Great stuff from Bodo. Another episode done on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. If you've got any comments, feedback, any suggestions of guests, any suggestions of questions, any suggestions of themes or topics you'd like us to cover on the show, please don't hesitate to contact me directly. Go to my Twitter, that's at Richard_Parr. You can also go to the website, richardparr.net. It's all there for you. More information on the show, about myself, about the people we've interviewed before. And if you've liked this episode and it's the first episode you've listened to, maybe go back and listen to some of the ones before. Really good chats with rugby players such as Chester Williams and David Campese. We speak to a hockey player, Ellen Hoog, Andy Tennant's a cyclist, and we'll have so many more interesting guests coming up on the Best in the World. So don't forget to go to iTunes, subscribe, rate, download, listen, tell your friends, tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your brother, tell your sisters, tell your teacher, tell your work colleagues. The Best in the World's the place to be, and I'll see you next week.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.